Thank you so much for such a brilliant film. Wow. Don't even know where to start, but I want to start off from the aesthetic before we go into the historical and cultural. Of course, Lara doesn't know my connections with Ireland and scholarship on dance. So it's really amazing to see such a remarkable history codified also by your film. So it's not only about the codes of the Irish dance, but your film itself gives it a certain texture and codification and so on. But as a filmmaker, I'm just interested how you put all of this together because there's a lot of archival materials, a lot of stills, there's motion, there are environmental shots, and of course, the dance. And putting it together with the structures and patterns and rhythm of the film is just remarkable. I wonder if you want to tell the audience your experience as a filmmaker who had to put all of this together.
Well, I'd love to, Awam. And first, Gurmina Mahagov is an or more dumsa vehansa live anacht. That's me speaking in Irish. It's a huge honor for me to be here and to share the film with you. Um, and you know what? I never thought I'd get to Nigeria to show that film. And I just wonder, would I have changed anything when I knew that I was going to be talking about West Africa in a documentary with an audience in West Africa? I just don't know. It's a fascinating. So it's a great honor, and thank you so much for being here. We made this film during COVID.
Oh, wow.
So I'd spent about 7 years developing it and trying to. The question I was wondering was, why were those? I don't know. Have you all heard of Riverdance? And
yeah.
So
Seen it twice.
yeah, okay. So like, why was Riverdance so successful? Was the question. Because to be honest with you, I don't think it's a particularly great show, but the dance in it is amazing. The dance is incredible, right? It's particularly the opening dance and the closing dance. Just
Right.
something you'll never see anywhere else. Like, if you get a chance to go see that show, go see it. But what else was it? And I was wondering, like, was there something fundamental in the way? I didn't think it was necessarily the show itself, but I thought maybe it was something in the dance. So I started trying to learn about Irish dance and found that as you to learn about dance of any kind, you have to learn about what dance is, and you begin to realize it's a repository of culture that we can say things through dance that we can't say with words or with music or with writing, with film even. And this is what dancers will tell you, that there's something inside us that bursts out when you dance. So that began to make me realize that if you study dances of a particular era, you might learn something of what the culture was like at that time, what the social circumstances were like at that time. So I spent about 7 years learning all of that. And then we raised a lot of money from very different sources. There's a lot of sources. There's a little bit of money here, a little bit of money here, a little bit of money here. And that allowed us to put this amazing production value together. There's 250 people made this film, so I'm sitting here representing all of them.
Wow.
You know, there's 100 dancers and musicians that you're listening to. I noticed the mix was a little odd. You could kind of have to struggle to hear the people. Something.
Yeah, more than the voice.
I don't know what's going on there, but it's not supposed to be like that. But I liked it. I'll tell you why I liked it, because we had to listen to the dance and the feet, right? And every one of those dancers, I've got a microphone in their sock or down underneath the piece of wood. We spent so much time ensuring that we mic the feet as much as you'd mic the instruments.
Wow.
Yeah. So you're listening to the steps of freedom. You're listening to the footsteps of freedom. Yeah.
Wow, just amazing. What I think actually this is perhaps one of the best communities to show this film too, because in Africa people are so intensely dance literate that it was so easy to watch and to understand as well. But the film, apart from the labor of putting it together, also gives us like a window into history, the history of the Irish culture, of course, and its impact around the world. So I guess it's not accidental that river dance was so popular. It's really because Irish culture is also part of American culture, and everybody had access to it. But I was just thinking about the historical aspects of it. From Ireland, you also took us to the Americas and so on, and just the Irish diaspora. And how the culture of Ireland keeps growing and keeps being cultivated. If it's not by the league, it's also by rituals like the Kellys, and so on. So it keeps growing like every culture and with pride as well. And I think that was something that the energy that the film captured so perfectly. So it's really incredible. But I just wanted to give the audience a sense of what history of Ireland you were trying to portray through the dance.
Thank you for that. There's two parts, two answers. The first one is, I think, and I think the exploration we made through this film maybe demonstrates that what's gone on in Riverdance is it's become this receptacle of generations, like centuries of different cultural experience, and African American and African culture is in Riverdance. And that's the only way to explain why, because before Riverdance, people weren't dancing like that in Ireland. So what happened was Michael Flatley and Gene Butler came from America with this history, with this legacy of the interaction that you saw in the film between African American and Irish culture, but it was embodied in them. Like Michael Flatley is an incredible tap dancer. Gene Butler is also a tap dancer, right? They're coming out of this. And no one really talked about that you get this, there's a boomerang going on from West Africa that's gone into the Americas, up through that culture, back out, and it hit the stage in Riverdance. I mean, who'd have ever thought? But that's the way human cultures work. Yeah. And I think you could keep looking at that in every other culture. And I imagine if you look at dance in different cultures in Nigeria, you can also see that they've developed and arced and warped depending on what's been going on. If they're rich, they're one way. If they're not so rich, the dance is another way. And that how you are existing as a culture gets reflected very much so in the dance. Yeah. The second part of your question, and I'm not sure if the film completely says this, but when I was young, I'm nearly 60 now, but when I was young, Irish dance was a dead form, except for the Comishún dance, the rigid competition dance. Nothing else was going on. Just the odd family, like that mother and daughter that you saw maybe in the last phase of towards the last, they were on their own. There's one family maintaining one part of the country's dance, just in the family. Now, I don't have time to explain all that, but anyone who knows about Irish dance knows who they are. And they saved a whole region's dance, that family. Edwina Guckian, the girl with with the curl at the crossroads, she saved the Leitrim dance, which her great-grandfather taught her and her grandfather taught her. But when she was young, no one wanted to know about the Leitrim dance, right? And now she's a world phenomenon. She has schools and everything. So when I was young, the dance was dead. And today the dance isn't dead. It's alive. And all these different forms are alive again. So in my own time, I've seen something go from nearly completely gone to finding a new life. And the same has happened through our language. Our language was dead when I was young. I speak it fluently, but that's because my grandmother was a nationalist. My grandmother told me about the dancing in the prison. She was in that prison, in that very prison cell, dancing in resistance to the British. Yeah. So she taught me dance, say no, use your body. If it's the last thing you have.
Yeah. Wow. Well, of course, as you know, we have a lot in common with the British, but I will not even go there. But I think the response, both Irish literature, Irish lyricism, etc., has made a big impact around the world, and it's good to see it boomerang back to Ireland as well. And I think that's remarkable that the film captured that spirit. I mean, I can't even imagine how expensive it is to make it, but it's a kind of film that I think if it's shown to people here who have dance companies, you may be seeing another version of Riverdance, yeah, because it's really infectious and the rhythms are familiar and the idea of the beat and the geometries of movement on stage, they're also familiar in West African dance. It's almost like you tapped into our own repertoire when watching the film. So I'm sure you'll find audiences here who can catch these anytime. So I'm just imploring the Irish Embassy and Consulate to actually reach out to those Nigerian choreographers, because you may be having a very rich conversation stimulated by such a rich film. So I want to thank you so much for doing that. Well, I want to give the audience a moment to respond also, because to see if they catch the same fever that I did with the rhythm and beat of the film. Yes, somebody way at the back. There's a microphone roving.
Thank you, Ruan, for a wonderful film. The part that really struck me was the dancing at the crossroads, because that's a very African thing as well. We do a lot of things at crossroads. And I thought it really resonated on how cultures can develop independently, almost the same sort of respect for how a crossroad is a place for change, for opportunity, for new life, really. And I thought that was, I mean, I got goosebumps at that point. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
I can't answer that. That's just perfectly said. Perfectly said.
Right.
And yeah, we all come from the same source, though, right? Ultimately, so
yeah.
Evening. Thanks for that. It was great. Just a question about, did you look at some of the dance styles in Southern Africa? You know, I kept thinking of Ipitombi and some of the dancing that you saw, I guess in a sense, also resistance, if you think about it, but in the beer halls or whatever. Did you look at that?
We didn't, but I think you're making an excellent point. Wouldn't it be great to make a project that just looks at that, looks at how dance in different parts of the world has been used as a form of resistance, and also how it morphs, because it changes when it does that, right? Its purpose, its function changes. Yeah, that's a lovely idea. Maybe it meets with what you were saying a moment ago, right?
Yeah. You may find people doing
right.
that. Yeah, I think the whole idea of resistance, not only to politics, but resistance to moral dominance, right? I like that part where it says it's really this dance is a vertical illustration of a horizontal desire, right? That was perfect because I mean, for any one of us who've been in the performing arts, you are transmuted and you infect your audience too with that transmutation. It's uncontrollable, and that's what scares moral authorities in particular. And I'm not surprised that the church needed priests to police this horizontal desires and so on. And also that the resistance of the dance was to create verticality as a kind of a disguise and resistance too. So that was beautifully well said in the film. Yeah. Any more from the audience? Yes.
Yeah, I think it was such a breathtaking film. I kind of just wandered in and I was completely captivated by it. And I think what really struck me was how emotional the whole thing was, because, you know, dance was this very expressive thing. It's a way to kind of to show pain, to show sorrow, to show joy, to show love. So I was kind of interested, what was the most emotional part of the film for you, or the most emotional moment in the filmmaking process?
Wow, that's a fantastic question. Okay, there's a couple of answers. Well, one is actually Aduke's point about the crossroads really hit me, because like we had priests who were supposed to be leaders of our local societies coming and breaking those crossroads up, which is just shockingly bad form. Just on a fundamental human level, just get out of the crossroads and leave that place of joy to be what it is. And that really touched me. The other thing was, well, God, there's so many. We filmed it during COVID, so we couldn't touch each other and we couldn't be near each other, and we had to create just a way of filming it so that it looks as if everyone's together, but they're not. So that's why there's quite a lot of sequences of just a dancer dancing on their own, and it's split screen, or else their families, or that scene on top of the mountain, which kind of has just worked out really well, but it's enforced that everyone's got to be 10 meters apart. And so we all bought into this, and we had this, like, as a team, a struggle to make a film about people being together while having to have them apart. And that made the whole everyday an interesting challenge. And you can't see it in the film, which makes me really happy, but that was so hard to achieve.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. That's amazing. Anyone from the audience? Yeah, one more. Okay, at the back. Yeah. I hope you get to show this film again.
Well, I'd love to. If anyone wants to host it over here, I'd be glad to talk to them. We made this 3 years ago, so it's been traveling all over the world. Last weekend it played at a festival in France.
Okay.
3 days earlier, it played in Bogota. It's won many awards. It won, but my 3 favorite awards are the International Nollywood Film Festival in Toronto.
Wow. Oh yeah, I know
Right?
that one.
I mean,
I know that. Yeah.
It's extraordinary. It's I was just so, I mean, we were just so, it's not been very popular with Irish Americans, and I wonder why.
Well, it'll get there.
Yeah,
It'll
no,
get
no,
there.
no, 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 that's not, it's not that. It's that
Yeah.
they don't like to know that that's what that was the story of Irish Americans.
Yeah.
They don't like that.
Yeah.
They don't want to know that they came to America.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was African Americans who helped the Irish most when they came.
Right. Right. Because you can't mention the history of tap dancing without Irish dance.
Yeah.
And so anyone who's familiar with African American contribution to tap dancing must have to reference the Irish dance and so on. So
yeah, but they don't want to. And you know,
well, I know that,
you know about about New York, right?
Yeah.
So the story of the Irish in New York is that the African Americans helped them during the famine.
Right.
When we had nothing, we came and everyone just shut the door on us except for the African Americans.
Right.
You know,
Right. Yeah.
And it's from that's where the dance comes from.
Yeah. I think there's a microphone at the back. It could be the last question from the audience. Yeah.
There is one
Yeah.
question actually, and
Okay.
it's quite timely considering where you are in the conversation.
So you can do them together, one after the other. So yeah.
So my question was, first of all, thank you for showing the history. So there was actually a time in history where Irish people and African Americans shared a culture and developed a culture together. And then of course you showed the transition to the minstrel shows and the blackface shows. So obviously there must have been some sort of change in the landscape that went from sort of we're in this together to now it's okay to make fun of the other people. And obviously you now had sort of this evolution into this combined dance form, which you described as sort of Michael Flatley's version of Irish dancing. So my question is actually for the Irish people in Ireland, not so much the Irish in America. How did they receive this sort of regeneration of what was a traditional dance that had mutated as a result of different influences?
Oh,
that's the question.
Yeah.
How was it received in Ireland?
Yeah.
As it evolved over time?
River dance? Yeah.
Well, not just river dance itself, but the evolution.
Oh, absolutely. No, they love it, but I don't think they've spent any time thinking about where it came from. So they just think it's Irish, aren't we? Great. Way, right? They don't get the fact that it actually comes from this thing. And also, Justin, I know you know this, but the African Americans would say, I mean, the story is it's not that we live together, it's we were forced to live together. I mean, the whites were as racist as you can imagine, right? It's just that this was it. But from that extraordinary tension between those two peoples comes this magical art form. Many actually, you see it in jazz music, you see it in blues music, you see it in bluesgrass, you see it in tap dance, you see it in Irish dance, right? But extraordinary things happen from that cauldron of the two cultures living cheek by jowl. And no, the Irish have not for a moment begun to realize that river dance is actually coming from that.
Right. All right. One last question from the audience.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to just start by saying that when I was younger, my dream was to become a professional dancer. I had my life planned out in junior secondary school. I didn't go to art class. I didn't study theater. I didn't become a professional dancer. I'm an educator today. But I always still find myself, fighting to wanting to do something in art, in dance, in all of that. And sometimes when people ask me why I wanted to become a dancer, I don't have an answer. I don't know why. But, watching this today, it's one of those things that reminds me of that connection that we have, even when we're young, even when you don't know what you're thinking of, that spiritual connection that you have. And I really want to thank you for doing this film because it's very powerful, it's very emotional. You can connect with it on a very strong level. Having said that, there was some things that you mentioned in terms of, you were talking about how some things, were dying, like the dance itself was a dying culture. You were talking about the language, which was dying as well. And we do have a lot of that now. For example, in Nigeria, dances are dying, languages are dying, you know, crafts, arts are dying. And I would really love to know, because I am currently working with mat weavers, for example, in Ekiti State. And I'd really like to know what people can do in a point where we are now to really revive some of those things that we know are dying, maybe based on the experience that you have choosing this film. You know, what would you say would be like the responsibility that we have to run with if we're going to revive some of this really dying culture that should not die?
God, and I actually do know the answers to that question, but it's a 50-year process. There's a film called, I don't know if anyone heard of Kneecap?
Yes,
Kneecap,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
It was it's an Irish film in the Irish language that just won Sundance quite recently, which is a big award, a festival in America. But it came out of a cultural militant movement that began in the 1950s and in the 1960s and developed and became quite strong in the north of Ireland in the 1970s. And there's another thing in Ireland called Tichicahar. It's an Irish language television channel. And it came out of a cultural militant movement that rose in the west of Ireland in the 1970s. And they demanded first an Irish language radio channel. That's all they wanted. But they demanded it and demanded from the government. They tied themselves down to major roadways so that the traffic had to stop. They brought things to a standstill. They tried to initiate strikes. And it took them decades, but eventually they got the radio channel. And then a decade later, they got the television channel. And then 30 years later, one of the movies that they made, that television channel made in Ireland, was nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars just 2 years ago. So that took 50 or 60 years. And these people, they didn't have guns, but they were as militant, they were gunless militants.
Mm.
And that's what it takes.
Mm.
And it takes people like you, sir, to do what you're doing with those local people in the meantime, just to keep the embers alive.
Yeah.
Right. But it's very hard. And I can't say I'm benefiting from it now. But my grandmother was part of that movement. And I've seen these people, and I was, when I was young, I used to meet them and I was frightened by them. I used to think, why are they shouting at me all the time about this dance or about this mat or about radio, right? Why are you, I just getting on with my life here. But I now look at the products in Ireland where we're beginning to speak our language and our young people are beginning to speak their language. They have a pride in our Irish language. Irish language is useless to anyone. Like, no one else speaks Irish language. There's only 5 million of us. And yet we're now speaking it. And we stand more proudly in the world because of that. And our dance and our films and our television. So I hope that's the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to add to it that all art forms are cultural practices, and culture is like a farm. It's constantly cultivated and cultivating itself. So it never dies, really. It may just recede somewhere. It can always be revived and so on. So I think you're doing the right thing by keeping the flame burning, but it's really a good way of congratulating Ruan too for actually making such an effective and impactful film. It's beautiful, it's deeply historical, and it even gives you an anthropological explanation of dance. So really, congratulations and well done. And welcome back. You should come back to Nigeria. Thank you.